Alexander Montgomery had everything a man could possibly want. Money, power, respect, and more zeros in his bank account than most people see in a lifetime. At 34
I
years
have
old,
done nothing wrong.
he had built a company from nothing
You have no
and turned
proof.
it into something worth
Justice will be
nearly $5
served.
billion.
I will not be intimidated.
He owned apartments in New York.
It's going to be all right.
And Tokyo.
Just hold
He
me.
had been on the
Always.
cover
We'll
of
get through this
magazines.
together.
Promise?
People stopped talking when he walked into a room.
Promise.
But on a rainy Tuesday
This place is
evening
perfect
in
for
downtown
us.
Chicago,
It's so
none
peaceful.
of that mattered.
I love it.
He sat
I
in the
love
back
you.
of his black luxury car, staring at his phone like it had personally offended him.
My beautiful girl,
On
I'm
the
so
screen
proud.
was a wedding
I love you,
invitation.
Dad.
His
I love you
ex-fiancée,
more than
the
anything.
woman he had once planned
This
to
is the
spend
best
forever
marriage.
with, was getting married to someone else. And someone had made sure he got invited. It wasn't an invitation. It was a message, a way of saying, look at me. Look at what you lost. Look at how happy I am without you. His driver, an older man named James, who had been with him for years, glanced in the rearview mirror. He could tell his boss was in one of those moods again, the quiet ones, the ones where Alexander stared out the window and didn't say a word for hours. Sir, we're almost home, James said gently. But there's something up ahead, a woman. She's sitting on the sidewalk right outside your building. In this rain, should I call someone? The police? A shelter, maybe? Alexander looked up, grateful. For the distraction. Through the rain-soaked window, he saw her. A young woman huddled against the cold stone wall of his luxury high-rise, trying desperately to stay dry under a thin piece of cardboard that was doing absolutely nothing to protect her from the storm. But it was her sign that made him stop. Most homeless people he saw held signs asking for money, for food, for help. This one was different. Written in careful, neat letters on a piece of torn cardboard were the words, not hungry, not addicted, just lost. A kind word helps. Alexander read it twice, 3 times. There was something about those words that hit him right in the chest. She wasn't asking for a handout. She wasn't playing on guilt. She was asking for something far more simple and far more rare. She was asking to be seen. In a world where everyone wanted something from him, where every conversation eventually circled back to money or favors or connections. This woman wanted nothing but human kindness. Just a word. Just a moment of connection. Pull over, Alexander said. James turned around, surprise on his face. Sir, it's pouring rain out there. Let me call someone. I can have security come down and pull the car over, James. James sighed, the way he always did when he knew there was no point arguing, and guided the car to the curb. Alexander grabbed his umbrella, stepped out into the downpour, and immediately felt the cold rain soaking through his expensive shoes. The woman looked up as he approached. Up close, he noticed things he couldn't see from the car. She was young, maybe 25 or 26. Her face was dirty from the streets, but underneath that, she had high cheekbones and intelligent brown eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her hands, wrapped around her knees for warmth, looked soft, not weathered like someone who had been on the streets for years. Her clothes were worn and torn, but underneath the tattered coat, he could see what might have once been a nice dress. Something someone might have worn to a job interview once upon a time. Hello, Alexander said, crouching down to her level and holding the umbrella over both of them. I saw your sign. The woman blinked, clearly surprised that anyone had stopped, that anyone had noticed. Oh, she said softly, her voice surprisingly clear and educated. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother anyone in this building. I'll move. I came here because it's well lit. Safer than the alleys. You're not bothering me. He extended his hand. I'm Alexander. What's your name? She hesitated for just a moment, looking at his hand like she had forgotten what human touch felt like. Then she took it. Her grip was firm, confident, not the grip of someone who had given up, My name is Elena. Elena, why are you out here? In this storm? At this hour? She smiled, and it was the saddest smile he had ever seen. That's a long story. The short version is, life happened. Bad choices. Worse luck. And here I am. Alexander found himself strangely captivated. There was no begging in her voice, no desperation, no attempt to make him feel guilty so he would give her money. Just acceptance. Just a woman who had fallen on hard times and was waiting for them to pass. How long have you been out here? 3 weeks now. I lost my job. Then I lost my apartment. The shelters are all full, and honestly, some of them are more dangerous than the streets. So I just move around. Find safe spots. Wait for morning. 3 weeks. Alexander tried to imagine it. 3 weeks of rain and cold and hunger. 3 weeks of people walking past like you didn't exist. 3 weeks of being invisible. Why this building? Elena looked up at the towering skyscraper behind her. It's beautiful. At night, all the lights in the windows look like stars. I pretend each light is a different life, a different story. Someone cooking dinner, someone reading to their kids, someone watching TV after a long day. It helps me remember that the world is still normal somewhere. That life goes on. Alexander felt something crack open in his chest. This woman, sitting in the rain with nothing, was finding beauty in the lights of his building. In the ordinary lives of people who had no idea she existed, he made a decision. It was impulsive. It was crazy. It was probably the most ridiculous thing he had ever done. But something about Elena made him want to be ridiculous. Elena, I have a strange proposition for you. She looked at him warily. What kind of proposition? I need a date to a wedding this Saturday. A very fancy wedding. A very uncomfortable wedding, if I'm being honest. My ex-fiancée is getting married, and I've been invited, probably so she can watch me squirm. He took a breath. I'll pay you, generously. Enough to get back on your feet. I'll get you a hotel room tonight. New clothes tomorrow. 3 good meals a day until Saturday. All I ask is that you come with me to this wedding and be my date. Elena stared at him like he had grown a second head. You're asking a homeless woman to be your date to a fancy wedding? Do you hear how crazy that sounds? Alexander laughed. Actually laughed. It was the first real laugh he had let out in months. I know exactly how crazy it sounds. But I'm also a very good judge of people. And I think you're not who you appear to be. Something flickered in Elena's eyes. A shadow. A memory. A secret. For just a moment, she looked like someone else entirely. Then it was gone. You'd be right about that, she whispered. Then louder, she said, Okay, I'll do it. But you should know something. What's that? I might surprise you. Alexander smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. I'm counting on it. He helped her to her feet. She was unsteady at first, her legs weak from sitting so long in the cold. He held her arm until she found her balance. Together, they walked to the car. James's face when he saw Alexander helping a homeless woman into the back seat of his $1,000,000 car was absolutely priceless. His mouth opened and closed several times like a fish, but no words came out. James. We're going to the Langham, Alexander said calmly. The Langham, sir? That's your hotel. I know. Elena will be staying there for the next few days. In the penthouse suite, James's eyes went wide. The penthouse suite at the Langham cost $15,000 a night. But he was a professional. He nodded, put the car in gear, and pulled. Away from the curb dot, as they drove through the rainy Chicago streets, Elena stared out the window at the passing lights. Her reflection in the glass looked lost in thought. Alexander? She said quietly, Yes, thank you. For stopping. For seeing me. Most people don't. I'm learning that most people are blind, he said. I almost was too. When they reached the hotel, the doorman rushed out with an umbrella. He did a double take when he saw Elena's appearance. But one look from Alexander silenced any questions. Inside, the lobby was all marble and crystal and soft lighting. Elena looked around with an expression Alexander couldn't quite read. Not awe, exactly. More like recognition. Like someone returning to a place they had been before. The hotel manager hurried over. Mr. Montgomery, we weren't expecting you tonight. How can we assist? My friend Elena will be staying in the penthouse suite for the next few days. She needs anything she asks for. Anything at all. Put it on my account. The manager's eyes flickered to Elena, taking in her disheveled appearance, her torn clothes. But he was too well trained to show surprise. Of course, sir. Of course, sir. Right away. Miss, if you'll follow me. Elena turned to Alexander. There were tears in her eyes, though she was fighting hard not to let them fall. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, he said. You reminded me what kindness looks like. Get some rest. I'll have a stylist come by tomorrow morning. We've got a wedding to prepare for. He watched her walk toward the elevator, escorted by the manager. Just before the doors closed, she turned and looked at him. And in that look, Alexander saw something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. He walked back out into the rain, not bothering with the umbrella this time. He had no idea what he had just done. No idea who this woman really was. No idea that, in 3 days, at his ex-fiancée's wedding, everything was about to change. But for the first time in months, Alexander Montgomery felt truly alive. The next 3 days felt like a dream. Not just for Elena, but for Alexander too. He found himself thinking about her at strange moments, during meetings, while signing documents. In the middle of the night, when he couldn't sleep. Wednesday morning came fast. Alexander had arranged for his personal stylist, a sharp woman named Margot, who had dressed celebrities and royalty, to meet Elena at the hotel. He gave strict instructions. Whatever she wants, whatever she needs. Don't ask questions. Margot arrived. At the penthouse suite at 9 in the morning, carrying racks of clothes, boxes of shoes, and more accessories than most people owned in a lifetime. She expected to find a typical client, someone nervous, someone excited, someone who would need lots of guidance. She did not expect what she found. Elena opened the door wearing the hotel robe, her hair still wet from the shower. Her face was clean now, free of the dirt and grime from the streets. And Margot stopped dead in her tracks. This woman was stunning. Not just pretty. Stunning in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or fancy clothes. She had high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 secrets. But it wasn't her beauty that surprised Margot. It was the way she stood, the way she held herself. Like someone who had been rich her whole life and was just pretending to be poor. Good morning, Elena said warmly. Please come in. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Margot. I'm Margot. I'll be helping you today. She walked in, still trying to process what she was seeing. Mr. Montgomery said you needed a complete wardrobe for a wedding on Saturday? Elena nodded. That's right. Something elegant, but not flashy. Nothing that screams for attention. Just timeless. I think. Classic. Margot raised an eyebrow. Most clients said things like sexy or glamorous or make me look like a movie star. Timeless was a word used by women who knew what they were doing. They started with the clothes. Margot pulled out dress after dress, watching Elena's reactions carefully. The bright red gown got a polite smile and a shake of the head. The sequined number got a small laugh and a firm no. The trendy cutout dress got a look of pure horror. Then Margot pulled out a simple midnight blue dress. No sequins. No cutouts. Just elegant fabric, perfect tailoring, and a neckline that suggested rather than shouted. Lena's face lit up. That one. That's the one. Margot was confused. But miss, this is the simplest dress I brought. Are you sure you don't want something more exciting? I'm sure, Elena said softly. Real elegance doesn't shout. It whispers. Margot felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard those words before. From her grandmother, who had grown up in old money and knew what true class looked like. Next came accessories. Margot had brought boxes of jewelry, from modern pieces to vintage finds. Elena walked past the cases of diamonds and emeralds without a second glance. She stopped at a small velvet box in the corner. Inside was a brooch. Victorian era, deep blue sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. It was beautiful, but understated. The kind of piece that would be overlooked by someone who didn't know what they were looking at. This one, Elena said. This is perfect. Margot's jaw nearly dropped. That brooch is over 100 years old. It's worth more than everything else here combined. Most people walk right past it. I know, Elena said quietly. That's why it's special. By noon, Margot had seen enough. She excused herself to use the restroom, but instead walked to a quiet corner of the hallway and called Alexander. Mr. Montgomery, she said when he answered, I need to ask you something. What is it, Margot? Who is this woman? There was a pause on the other end. Why do you ask? Because she just picked out a Victorian sapphire brooch like she was choosing a sandwich for lunch. She knows fabrics. She knows designers. She corrected me on a vintage Chanel detail, and she was right. This is not a homeless woman, Mr. Montgomery. This is someone who grew up with money. Old money. The kind of money that doesn't need to show off. Another pause, longer this time. Then Alexander said, keep helping her. And Margot? Don't mention this to anyone. I won't, sir. When Margot returned to the suite, Elena was standing by the window, looking out at the city below. Her reflection in the glass looked sad, lost, like someone who had seen too much and forgotten how to be happy. Margot, Elena said without turning around. Can I ask you something? Of course. What do you see when you look at me? The question caught Margot off guard. She thought about it carefully before answering. I see someone who's been through hard times, but I also see someone strong. Someone who knows things most people don't. Someone who's hiding. Elena turned around. There were tears in her eyes. Thank you for being honest. Most people aren't. That evening, Alexander decided to have dinner with Elena. He told himself it was just to check on her, to make sure she was comfortable, to go over plans for the wedding. But deep down, he knew that was a lie. He wanted to see her again. They met in the hotel's private dining room, a small, elegant space with a fireplace and a view of the Chicago skyline. When Elena walked in, Alexander literally forgot to breathe. She wore a simple cream blouse and tailored navy pants. Her hair, now clean and shiny, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She wore almost no makeup, just a touch of color on her lips. But she didn't need more. She looked like she owned the world. Elena, Alexander breathed, you look ... different? She smiled, but it was nervous. I know. It's strange, isn't it? How quickly we can change how we look. How quickly we can pretend to be someone else. Or maybe, Alexander said carefully, you're not pretending. Maybe this is who you really are. Something flickered in her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or recognition. She sat down across from him, suddenly looking vulnerable. Alexander, I need to tell you something. Before this goes any further, you deserve to know. He held up a hand. Tell me after the wedding. I have a feeling the truth will come out then anyway. Let's just enjoy tonight. Please. She nodded slowly. Okay. After the wedding. They talked for hours. Alexander learned that she loved classical music, especially Chopin, that she spoke 3 languages fluently, that she had read more books than anyone he had ever met, from classic literature to modern philosophy. When he mentioned a business deal he was working on, she asked questions that showed she actually understood finance and strategy. By the time dessert arrived, Alexander realized something terrifying. He liked her. Not as a charity case, not as a curiosity, not as a mystery to be solved. He genuinely liked her as a person, her mind, her spirit. The way she laughed, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep inside, and he had no idea who she really was. Friday, Alexander sent Elena to the spa while he handled some business. He couldn't focus. His mind kept drifting back to her, to the way she looked at the city lights, to the sadness in her eyes that she tried so hard to hide. That evening, he sent a package to her hotel room. Inside was a small velvet box, the sapphire brooch she had admired. Attached was a note in his handwriting. For luck tomorrow. Though I don't think you need it. Elena sat on the edge of her hotel bed, holding the brooch in her hands. The room around her was beautiful, expensive, everything she could have wanted. But she barely noticed. She thought about Alexander, about the way he had stopped in the rain, about the way he looked at her like she was a person, not a problem, about the way he trusted her without knowing anything about her. And for the first time in 3 years, Elena cried. Not sad tears, not angry tears, but tears of hope, tears of gratitude, tears of something she thought she had lost forever, the feeling of being loved. She pinned the brooch to her pillow and slept better than she had in months. Saturday morning arrived, wrapped in golden autumn light. Alexander stood in his penthouse, adjusting his tuxedo in the mirror. He was nervous, more nervous than he had been for any business deal, any board meeting, any IPO. He was going to his ex-fiancée's wedding with a woman he barely knew. A woman who was clearly hiding something. A woman who, 3 days ago, had been sleeping on a sidewalk in the rain, and he couldn't wait to see her. His phone buzzed. A text from Margot. She's ready. The hotel lobby. 4 p.m. And Alexander? Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself? What did that mean? He grabbed his keys and headed out the door. When he reached the lobby, he understood. Elena stood by the fountain in the center of the room, wearing the midnight blue dress. The sapphire brooch sparkled at her shoulder. Her hair was swept up elegantly, showing off her neck and those incredible cheekbones. She looked like a painting, like something from another era, like a woman who had never known a day of hardship in her life. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped Alexander cold. It was the look in her eyes. A look that said, I know something you don't know, and tonight everything changes. She walked toward him, her heels clicking on the marble floor. When she reached him, she smiled. Not the nervous smile from before, a confident smile. The smile of someone who had made a decision. You look nice, she said. Elena, you look ... I know. She touched his arm. Alexander, whatever happens tonight, I want you to remember something. What's that? You saw me, the real me, before you knew anything about me. You saw a homeless woman in the rain, and you treated her like a queen. That means more than you will ever know. Alexander wanted to ask more, wanted to push, wanted to demand answers. But the car was waiting. The wedding was waiting. And the truth, whatever it was waiting too. Shall we? He said, offering his arm. Elena took it. We shall. They walked out into the Chicago evening, toward a wedding that would change everything. Neither of them knew what was coming. Neither of them could have guessed the secrets that would be revealed. But as they drove toward the Plaza Hotel, Elena squeezed Alexander's hand once, just once, and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." Alexander squeezed back. "Always." He had no idea that in just a few hours, those words would mean more than he could possibly imagine. The Plaza Hotel looked like something from a fairy tale. Golden light poured from every window. Expensive cars lined the driveway. Men in tailored suits and women in glittering gowns walked through the entrance, laughing and chatting like they didn't have a care in the world. Alexander's car pulled up to the red carpet. He stepped out first, then turned to offer his hand to Elena. When she emerged from the car, something strange happened. The doorman, a man in his 60s who had probably seen every kind of rich person walk through those doors, actually stopped. What he was doing. He stared at Elena for just a second too long. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because something about her seemed familiar to him. Elena noticed. She gave him a small nod, almost a greeting, almost a recognition. The doorman's eyes widened slightly, but he said nothing. He just opened the door and watched them walk inside. The ballroom was already crowded. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne and tiny fancy foods that cost more than most people's dinners. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbows across the walls, and at the center of it all stood the bride. Alexander's ex-fiancée looked beautiful in her white gown, but there was something hard in her eyes, something calculating. She was working the room like a politician, making sure everyone important knew she was the star of the show. Then she saw Alexander. Her smile tightened for just a moment before she rearranged it into something more welcoming. She excused herself from the group she was talking to and glided toward them, her expensive dress swishing against the floor. "Alexander," she said warmly, air-kissing both his cheeks. "You came. I wasn't sure you would." "Wouldn't miss it," Alexander said, his voice perfectly calm. "And you brought a friend." The bride's eyes swept over Elena, looking for something. A designer label, an expensive handbag, some clue about who this woman was and where she fit in the social order. But Elena wore no labels, no obvious wealth, just the simple blue dress and the antique brooch that most people wouldn't recognize. "This is Elena," Alexander said, "my date." The bride extended her hand, but her smile had cooled by several degrees. "Elena, what a pretty name. Have we met before? You look familiar." Elena took her hand briefly. "I don't think so. But congratulations on your wedding." The Plaza was an excellent choice. Of course it was. The bride's voice dripped with satisfaction. "Only the best for today. I particularly love the chandeliers," Elena continued smoothly. "Original Baccarat from 1907. Do you? Know they're worth more than most houses in this city? It's wonderful that the hotel has preserved them." The bride blinked. She clearly did not know that. Her smile tightened further. "Yes, well, I knew that. Obviously. Of course you did." Elena's smile was warm and genuine. Completely unbothered. The bride looked at Alexander with new eyes. Who had he brought? Some kind of art historian? A museum curator? She couldn't figure it out, and it was driving her crazy. "Well," she said after an awkward pause, "I should mingle. Save me a dance, Alexander." She walked away, but Alexander could see her whispering to one of her bridesmaids, pointing at Elena, asking questions. He leaned close to Elena. "That was impressive. How did you know about the chandeliers?" Elena shrugged, but there was something in her eyes, a memory. "I stayed here once, a long time ago, The manager gave me a tour. Alexander wanted to ask more, but the ceremony was starting. They found their seats and watched as the bride walked down the aisle toward her groom. The groom was handsome enough, Alexander supposed, rich enough too, but there was something about the way he looked at the bride that felt wrong. Possessive, not loving, like she was a prize he had won, not a person he adored. Throughout the ceremony, Alexander stole glances at Elena. She watched with an expression he couldn't read. Not sad, not happy, just knowing, like she understood something the rest of them didn't. After the ceremony came the reception. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. People laughed and drank and pretended to be having the time of their lives. And then came the moment Alexander had been dreading. The bride stood up, tapping her glass with a spoon until the room went quiet. "I'd like to propose a toast," she announced, "to love, to honesty, to finding the person who completes you." People raised their glasses. "And speaking of honesty," the bride continued, her eyes finding Alexander across the room, "I think we're all curious about something. Alexander, darling, you simply must introduce your date properly. We're all dying to know where you found her. She's not from any of our circles, is she?" The room went quiet, really quiet. Everyone knew what was happening. The bride was publicly humiliating Alexander's date, forcing him to admit she was an outsider, an unknown, someone who didn't belong. Alexander felt his face grow hot. He opened his mouth to say something, anything, to protect Elena from this cruelty. But Elena touched his arm. "It's okay," she whispered. Then she stood up. Every eye in the room turned to her. "You're right," Elena said calmly. "I'm not from your circles. But you have seen me before. In fact, we've met. Twice." The bride's smile faltered. "We have?" "Once at a charity gala in 2019. You were trying to convince someone to invest in your fiance's company. And once at a private dinner at the Four Seasons. You sat next to me and talked about how much you loved my dress." The bride's face went pale. "That's impossible. I would remember." "You don't remember because I looked different then. I had different hair, different clothes, different jewelry." Elena paused. "I was sitting next to my father." Someone in the crowd gasped. A quiet sound, but it echoed in the silent room. "Your father?" The bride repeated. "Who is your father?" Alina looked around the room slowly, taking in all the faces, all the wealthy, powerful people who had no idea who she was. "My father," she said quietly, "is Samuel." She didn't need to give a last name. Everyone in that room knew who Samuel was, one of the richest men in America, a shipping magnate who had built an empire from nothing, a man who had disappeared from public life years ago after a family tragedy. The bride's face went from pale to white. "No, that's not possible. The daughter died." "There was an accident." "I didn't die," Elena said. "I disappeared on purpose." The groom stood up, his face red. "This is ridiculous. If you're really his daughter, prove it." Elena turned to him, and her eyes were sad. "You sat across from me at that dinner. You told me about your development project. You showed my father numbers that didn't add up. He declined to invest. 2 weeks later, you started dating Alexander's fiancée. Interesting timing, don't you think?" The groom's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Alexander sat frozen, watching this woman he had found on the street transform into someone else entirely, someone powerful, someone who had been hiding all along. Elena reached into her small clutch and pulled out her phone. "I kept the proposal document. Want me to show everyone? The part where you inflated the property values by 40%. The part where you lied about the zoning approvals." The bride looked at her new husband with horror in her eyes. Is this true? He's lying, the groom sputtered. She's lying. This is some kind of setup. It's not a lie. The new voice came from the back of the room. Deep, authoritative, familiar. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway, looking older and wearier than his photographs, was Samuel, Elena's father, and he was crying. Elena, he breathed. Mia, my baby girl. Elena's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Dad. He walked toward her through the crowd, people parting automatically before him. When he reached her, he pulled her into his arms and held her like he would never let go. 3 years, he whispered. 3 years I've looked for you, hoped for you, prayed for you. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. Don't ever be sorry. He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. You're alive. You're here. That's all that matters. The room was completely silent. Even the waiters had stopped moving. Finally, the bride found her voice. Mr. Samuel, we had no idea. If we had known your daughter was here, we would have. You would have what? Samuel turned to her, and his eyes were cold. Treated her differently? Been nicer to her because of who her father is, not because of who she is? The bride had no answer. Samuel looked at the groom. And you tried to cheat me. You lied to my face. And now you've married a woman who broke my daughter's friend's heart to chase your money. That tells me everything I need to know about both of you. He put his arm around Elena. Come, Mia. Let's go home. But Elena didn't move. She looked at Alexander, who was still sitting in his chair, stunned. He hadn't said a word, hadn't moved, just watched everything unfold with an expression of shock and something else, something that looked like hurt. Dad, Elena said softly, I'd like to bring someone. Samuel followed her gaze to Alexander. He studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. That's the man who found you? He's the man who saw me, the real me, when I had nothing. Samuel walked over to Alexander and extended his hand. Thank you. For my daughter. For whatever kindness you showed her. I'm in your debt. Alexander stood, shaking the older man's hand. Automatically, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who she was. I know, Samuel smiled. That's why I'm grateful. Elena came to Alexander's side. Come with us, please. Alexander looked at his ex-fiancée, standing frozen by the head table, her wedding ruined, her life falling apart around her. He felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity. Just emptiness. Then he looked at Elena, at this woman who had been homeless 3 days ago and was now revealed as one of the richest heiresses in America. At this woman who had asked for nothing but a kind word. He took her hand. Together, the three of them walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind the whispers, the shocked faces, and the wreckage of a wedding that would be talked about for years to come. As they reached the lobby, Elena stopped. She turned to Alexander. I should have told you. I wanted to tell you. But I was scared. Scared of what? Scared that if you knew who I was, you would treat me differently. Like everyone else does. You were the first person in years who looked at me and saw just me. I didn't want to lose that. Alexander squeezed her hand. You didn't lose it. You could be a queen or a janitor, and I'd still see the woman who held a sign in the rain asking for kindness. Elena smiled. A real smile. The first one Alexander had seen since they met. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the night sky. A car waited at the curb. And somewhere behind them, in the glittering ballroom, a bride was learning that money couldn't buy happiness. And lies had a way of catching up. But that wasn't their story anymore. Their story was just beginning. Car ride was quiet. Not the uncomfortable kind of quiet, but the kind where too much had happened and no one knew where to start. Elena sat between her father and Alexander, staring out the window at the city lights blurring past. Samuel broke the silence first. Do you know how many nights I lay awake, wondering if you were alive, if you were warm, if you were safe? Elena's voice cracked. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I left you a note. I thought that was enough. A note? Samuel laughed, but there was no humor in it. A note that said, don't look for me. I need to find myself. Do you have any idea what that did? To me? To your mother's memory? She would have been heartbroken. Mom always said I was stubborn, Elena whispered. She also said you were the bravest person she ever knew. Samuel reached over and took her hand. I didn't understand then. I think I understand now. You needed to know who you were without the money, without the name, without me. Yes. And did you find it? Elena thought about the question. She thought about the 3 years on the streets, the hunger, the cold, the people who looked through her like she was invisible. And she thought about Alexander, crouching in the rain with an umbrella, treating her like a human being. I found out who I am when I had nothing, she said quietly. I found out that I'm stronger than I thought. I found out that most people are kind, but they're scared. Scared to get involved. Scared to help. Scared to see. She looked at Alexander. And I found out that the rarest thing in the world is someone who stops. Alexander said nothing. He just looked at her with those eyes that saw everything. They pulled up to a massive house on the outskirts of the city. Not a house, an estate. Gates, long driveway, lights glowing from dozens of windows. Elena stared at it like she was seeing a ghost. I forgot how big it is. It's just a building, Samuel said. It was never a home without you in it. Inside, everything was exactly as Elena remembered. The grand staircase, the paintings on the walls, the piano in the corner of the living room where her mother used to play on Sunday mornings. She walked to the piano and ran her fingers over the keys. A single note rang out in the silence. You kept it tuned, she said, every month. Your mother would have killed me if I let it go out of tune. Samuel smiled sadly. Play something, please? Elena sat down. Her fingers found the keys automatically, muscle memory taking over. She played the piece her mother had taught her when she was 6. Simple, sweet, full of memory. When she finished, there were tears on her face. And on her father's face, too. Alexander stood in the doorway, watching. He felt like an intruder on something private and precious. But he couldn't look away. Samuel seemed to remember he was there. Alexander, come in. Sit down. We have a lot to talk about. They sat in the living room, surrounded by photographs of Elena growing up. Elena as a baby. Elena at her first piano recital. Elena in a graduation gown. Elena with her mother, both of them laughing at something the camera didn't catch. I need to know everything, Samuel said. How you found her. How she was living. All of it. So Alexander told him. About the rainy night. About the sign that said, a kind word helps. About bringing her to the hotel. About the wedding. About not knowing who she was until Margot called him with suspicions. You knew? Elena stared at him. You knew before the wedding? I suspected, Alexander admitted. Vasquez isn't a common name. And when Margot told me about your taste, your knowledge, I put it together, but it wasn't my secret to reveal. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. Samuel studied Alexander with new respect. Most men would have used that information, tried to profit from it. I had everything I needed, Alexander said simply. I had her company. That was enough. Elena felt her heart swell. This man, this incredible man who had seen her at her lowest and wanted nothing from her but herself. Dad, she said slowly. There's something I need to tell you about why I really left. Samuel's face grew serious. I'm listening. Elena took a deep breath. It wasn't just about finding myself. It was about the people around us. Our so-called friends, the ones who smiled to our faces and stabbed us in the backs. The ones who only wanted our money, our connections, our name. She looked at Alexander. After Mom died, I started paying attention, really paying attention. And I realized I didn't have a single real friend. Not one person who would still talk. To me, if I was poor, it was like living in a bubble made of glass. I could see the world, but I couldn't touch it. Couldn't trust it. Samuel nodded slowly. I know, Mia. I knew it too, but I didn't know how to fix it, so I fixed it myself. I left everything, every credit card, every phone, every connection. I wanted to know what it felt like to be no one, to be judged by my character, not my bank account. And what did you learn? Elena smiled. I learned that most people are good. The ones who have nothing are often the most generous. The ones who have everything are often the most empty. She looked at Alexander, and I learned that real love doesn't care about any of it. Real love sees you, just you. The room fell silent again. The clock on the mantel ticked softly. Finally, Samuel stood up. It's late. We're all exhausted. Alexander, you'll stay here tonight. Plenty of rooms. He paused at the door. Elena, I'm proud of you. I should have said that 3 years ago. I'm proud of who you've become. After he left, Elena and Alexander sat alone in the quiet living room. I should go home, Alexander said, but he didn't move. Don't. Elena's voice was soft. Stay. Talk to me. I've been alone for 3 years. I don't want to be alone tonight. So they talked. About everything and nothing. About her childhood. About his business. About the future and what it might hold. At some point, Elena fell asleep on the couch, her head resting against the pillow. Alexander covered her with a blanket and sat watching her for a long time. He thought about how strange life was. A week ago, he was depressed about his ex-fiancée's wedding. Now he was in the house of one of the richest men in America, watching that man's daughter sleep, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. The next morning, Elena woke to the smell of breakfast cooking. She followed the smell to the kitchen, where she found her father at the stove, making pancakes exactly the way her mother used to. Dad, you haven't cooked in 20 years. I remember how. He flipped. A pancake perfectly. Your mother would kill me if I let you go hungry under my roof. They ate together, just the two of them. It felt normal, good, like old times. Alexander left early, Samuel said. Said he had meetings, but he left this for you. He slid a small envelope across the table. Elena opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. Asterisk, Elena, asterisk, asterisk, I didn't want to wake you. You looked peaceful for the first time since I met you. Asterisk. Asterisk, I don't know what happens next. I don't know if you're going back to your old life or starting a new one. I don't know if there's room in that life for someone like me. Asterisk, asterisk, but I know this. When I saw you on that street, holding that sign, I saw the most real person I've ever met. Not an heiress, not a homeless woman, just a person. A person I wanted to know. Asterisk, asterisk, whatever you decide, wherever you go, I'm grateful for these few days. Hope that's not weird. Asterisk. Elena laughed and cried at the same time. Her father watched her with knowing eyes. He's a good man, Samuel said. The best. So what are you going to do about it? They're amazing, by the way. Then I'm going to figure out who. And then I'm going to thank him properly. For everything. Later that day, Elena walked through her old house, room by room. memory by memory, the little trinkets collected over a lifetime. On the desk was a letter in her mother's handwriting, addressed to Elena. With shaking hands, she opened it. Asterisk. My darling Elena. Asterisk, asterisk. If you're reading this, I'm gone. And if I know you, you're probably going through a difficult time. You always were so much like me. Too stubborn. Too proud. Too quick to carry the world on your shoulders. Asterisk, asterisk, writing this because I need you to know something. Something I didn't say enough when I was alive. Asterisk, asterisk, you are enough. Not because of our money. Not because of our name. Not because of anything you have or haven't done. You are enough because of who you are. Your heart. Your spirit. Refusal to give up. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know you'll find your way. I know you'll find love. Real love. The kind that doesn't care about bank accounts or last names. Asterisk, asterisk, and when you find it, hold on tight. Don't let pride get in the way. Don't let fear stop you. Asterisk, asterisk, I'll always be with you. In the music. In the memories. In your heart. All my love, Mom. Asterisk. Elena clutched the letter to her chest and wept. Not sad tears. Not happy tears. Just tears. The release of 3 years of pain and loneliness and fear. When she finally looked up, her father was standing in the... She said you'd find it when you needed it most. Elena nodded, unable to speak. Your mother was the smartest person I ever knew, Samuel continued. She knew you'd need to wander. She knew you'd need to fall. She also knew you'd get back up. I miss her so much. I know, Mia, I know. So do I. They stood together in the sea. Quiet study, father and daughter, bound by love and loss, and the complicated business of being human. Outside, the sun was setting. Another beginning, waiting somewhere in the darkness. Elena touched the letter in her pocket. She thought about Alexander, about his kindness, about his patience, about the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. Tomorrow, she would figure out what came next. Tonight, she would let herself feel the grief, feel the hope. 3 weeks of phone calls and meetings and lawyers, and all the complicated business of returning to a life Elena had left behind. There were accounts to reopen, properties to review, people to meet. Old friends who turned out not to be friends at all. Old enemies who suddenly wanted to make peace. Through it all, Elena thought about Alexander. He hadn't called, hadn't visited, hadn't done anything except leave that note and disappear from her life. At first she was hurt. Then she was confused. Then she was angry. Didn't he want to see her? Didn't he care? Her father watched her mope around the house for 2 weeks before finally sitting her down. You're an idiot, he said bluntly. Excuse me? My brilliant, stubborn, wonderful daughter is an idiot. Samuel poured himself a cup of coffee. That man is not calling because he thinks that's what you want. He thinks you're busy. He thinks you're reclaiming your life. He thinks you might not want a reminder of the time you spent on the streets. Elena opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. He's giving you space, Mia, because he respects you. Because he's not like all the others who would be camped on our doorstep right now, trying to cash in. How do you know that? Because I had him investigated. Samuel held up a hand before she could protest. Don't look at me like that. I'm a father. It's my job. And do you know what I found? Elena waited. Alexander. Montgomery is exactly who he appears to be. He built his company from nothing. He's never been involved in any scandals. He treats his employees well. He donates millions to charities anonymously. And he's been alone since his engagement ended. Not dating, not partying, just working and living quietly. Samuel leaned forward. He's one of the good ones, Elena. Don't let him slip away because you're too proud to make the first move. That night, Elena drove to Alexander's building, the same building where he had found her in the rain. She stood on the sidewalk for a long time, looking at the spot where she used to sleep. Someone had left flowers there. A small bunch of white roses with a note. She bent down to read it. Asterisk, to the woman who taught us that kindness matters. Thank you for reminding this neighborhood to look closer. Asterisk. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't know who had left them. Some neighbor who had seen her sitting there night after night. Someone who had been touched by her story. She tucked one of the roses into her pocket and walked into the building. The doorman recognized her immediately. Miss Elena, we've heard so much about you. Mr. Montgomery's office is on the top floor. Go right up. The elevator ride felt like forever. She practiced what she would say 12 times. Each time it sounded wrong. When the doors opened, she stepped into a quiet reception area. A young woman sat at a desk typing. Can I help you? I'm here to see Alexander. Do you have an appointment? No, but tell him it's Elena. He'll see me. The woman looked skeptical, but picked up the phone. She whispered something. Then her eyes went wide. Right away, miss. Go on in. He's in the corner office. Elena walked through the glass doors, and there he was. Alexander stood by the window, looking out at the city. He turned when she entered, and the look on his face made her heart. Stop, Elena. His voice was soft, wondering. You're here. You didn't call. I didn't want to push. You had so much to deal with. I didn't want space. I wanted you. They stood there, just looking at each other. Then Alexander crossed the room in 3 long steps and pulled her into his arms. I've thought about you every single day, he whispered into her hair. Every hour, every minute. Then why didn't you come? Because I was scared. He pulled back to look at her. You're an heiress. You have a whole life waiting for you. A life that doesn't include a man who found you on the street. Elena laughed. Actually laughed. Alexander, don't you get it? That's exactly why I need you. You're the only person in the world who saw me when I had nothing. You're the only person I trust to see me now that I have everything. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the white rose. Someone left flowers at the spot where I used to sleep. A stranger. Someone who was touched by our story. Our story? Alexander. Yours and mine. Don't you see? What happened between us matters. It matters to more people than just us. I love you, Elena. I think I loved you from the moment I read your sign. I love you too. And I'm done waiting. No more space. No more being careful. Life is too short. They kissed then, standing in his office with the city spread out below them. It felt like coming home. Like finding something they didn't know they had lost. Later, they walked through the city together. Just 2 people holding hands, anonymous. Among the crowds, Elena told him about her mother's letter, about the things she had learned in her 3 years away, about the loneliness he had felt even surrounded by, wealth, about how meeting her had changed everything. Your ex-fiancé called me, Elena said quietly. Alexander stopped walking. What? When? A few days after the wedding. Said she wished she had been more like me. What did you say? I said she didn't need to be like me. She just needed to be honest with herself. Elena shrugged. I think she's going to leave him. The groom. I think she finally sees what everyone else saw. Good for her. Alexander meant it. People can change, if they want to. They walked in silence for a while, watching the city go about its business. Around them, what happens now? Alexander asked finally. Now? Now we live. We figure it out day by day. I have a foundation to run. My father wants me to take over some of the business. And I want to start a program for homeless women. Real help. Not just handouts. That's beautiful. It's necessary. Elena stopped and faced him. I was lucky. I had a home to go back to. A father who loved me. Most people on the streets don't have that. They're not hiding from wealth. They're hiding from a world that forgot them. Alexander took both her hands. Then we'll help them. Together. Whatever you need. Whatever it takes. Together, Elena repeated. I like the sound of that. 6 months later, on a perfect spring afternoon, they stood in the same spot where Alexander had first seen Elena. But everything was different now. A small crowd had gathered. Reporters, cameras, important-looking people in suits. But at the center of it all were Elena and Alexander, cutting a ribbon dot above them. A new sign read, ****, the Kindness Center, a place to be seen. ***, it was a shelter, but not just any shelter. It had private rooms, not crowded dorms. A kitchen, where residents could cook their own meals. A garden where they could grow food. Classrooms where they could learn skills. Counselors who actually listened. Elena had designed it herself, drawing on everything she had learned during her 3 years on the streets. Today, she said to the crowd, we're not opening a building. We're opening a promise. That no one will be told they don't matter. That everyone deserves to be seen. The cameras flashed. The crowd applauded Dot, and in the front row, Samuel clapped loudest of all, tears streaming down his face. Later, when the crowd had gone and the cameras had left, Alana and Alexander sat on a bench near the shelter's entrance, the same spot where she used to sleep. I keep thinking about that night, Elena said softly. The rain, the cold, your car pulling up. I keep thinking about your sign. Alexander smiled. A kind word helps. Most people would have asked for money. You asked for humanity, because that's what I really needed. Not a handout, just proof that someone out there still cared. Alexander put his arm around her. I'm glad I stopped. I'm glad you were crazy enough to take a homeless woman to a wedding. They laughed together, a sound carrying into the evening air. Dot, from inside the shelter, they could hear music. Someone was playing the piano. An old song. A happy song. Elena leaned, her head on Alexander's shoulder. Do you think we'll be okay? I know we will. How do you know? Because we've already survived the worst, the streets. If we can get through all that, we can get through anything. Elena smiled. Together? Together. Above them, the stars began to appear. One by one, scattered across the darkening sky like hope itself. And somewhere in the shelter, a woman who had been invisible found herself humming along to the music. Found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would be better, because someone had cared enough to build a place, had a way of rippling outward, touching lives that would never know the names of the people who started it all. The night grew darker. The city sparkled with lights, and two people who had found each other in the rain sat together, holding hands, watching the world turn. Epilogue. 1 year LAT the wedding was small. Just family and close friends. No reporters. No cameras. Just love. Elena wore a simple white dress. No diamonds. No expensive accessories. No flashy watch. Just the ring on his finger that meant everything. Samuel walked his daughter down the aisle, crying the whole way. Take care of her, he managed. Forever, Alexander promised. They wrote their own vows. Elena went first. Alexander, when I was nothing, you saw everything. When I was invisible, you made me seen. When I had lost hope, you gave me yours. I promised to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. Alexander wiped his eyes. Elena, you taught me that the greatest treasure isn't money or success. It's connection. Real connection with another human being. I promise to always stop, to always see. Everyone cheered Dot, and a woman who had been homeless found herself smiling for no reason at all. Dot, maybe it was the sunshine. Maybe it was hope. Dot, maybe it was just love, rippling outward from two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. The end.